Japanese farmers in the Edo period faced a crisis. They saw their fields abandoned, their money vanishing, and their young men disappearing. They looked around, struggling to figure out why things were falling apart. And they found the answer. Hostess Girls. On the surface, this is a video about a group of old men afraid of change, fighting for a world that's passing them by. But underneath, it's also a video that, through the actions of these men, lets you understand a lot about Japanese culture back then, like the difference between country folk and city folk, and how much power ordinary people actually had in a military dictatorship. One day, the village leaders of the Kumagaya area caught wind of a rumor that shook them. Hostess girls were coming to their area. Everyone agreed this disaster had to be stopped. To understand why these peasants were shaking in their sandals, we have to look at what was happening in the Japanese countryside at the time. The prostitution industry was taking over rural Japan, especially at post stations. Post stations were rest stops along major roads with businesses that catered to the weary traveler. Now, ever since the government allowed the inns inside these post stations to have 2 prostitutes each, it was over. These women were called serving girls or hostess girls, but instead of miso soup, they served a fantasy and hosted a warm bed. You might think, well, it's just 2 per inn. That's not that much, right? Thing is, many inns treated the 2 serving girl limit more like the speed limit. You can get away with breaking it as long as you are willing to take off your top. Stations did have to send records of their employees to the capital, but when you double-check these records, you find that innkeepers were just terrible at math. Even as the inns all over Japan hired more and more prostitutes, the government increased the limit for post stations near the capital of Edo, because obviously those places needed more ladies to service the large population. Did they double the limit? Triple? No, it got crazy. One station was allowed 500 hostess girls. The post stations near the capital were home to thousands of working women. And 9 out of 10 hostess girls recommend Tokyo Treat and Sakura-ko, the sponsor for this video. Choose your wife or your son. I'll let 2 of you go. You're the serial killer on the news that forces his victims to make impossible choices. That's right. Now choose. Honey, he's our only son. Just let me go. It's okay. I'm okay. Just save our son. No, save Mom. You have to. I can go. I'm prepared. No, shoot me. No, me. I don't know. I can't choose. I need to think. I need to eat something. Like this box of Tokyo Treat. It's a service that sends you a box of sweet and savory snacks every month. The theme for this month is Tokyo Throwback, all about retro Tokyo, with snacks like banana Kit Kat, delicious gummies, and a chocolate donut. And I just couldn't get enough of these twisty, cheesy bites chips. And because I'm feeling fancy, I also have this box of Sakura-ko. It's a more premium snack box service with treats from real local Japanese makers. This month's theme is Summer in Hokkaido. There are snacks like Hokkaido red bean tea, and this month, you even get this awesome kobachi bowl. Okay, I needed that. I now know what I have to do. Bye. Now and then, you just need some time to think. Click on the link in the description and use code Linfamy to get a discount on your first box now. You can give it to someone as a gift. It was an industry, all right. Travel guides reviewed post stations and ranked them by the quality of their room service. Some guys got really creative. They created whole stories around it. A famous one was about 2 misfits traveling the Tokaido Road, visiting places along the way, falling into more honey traps than Winnie the Pooh, but also showing you what those places were like. Now, travelers might have paid more, but locals provided stable revenue. Inns fostered intimate relationships with their local clients, and it was these relationships that the peasants from earlier worried about. These peasants lived in the villages around Kumagaya, a post station on the Nakasendo. This station had a good thing going for it. 6 times a month, it hosted a popular market. If you were in the area and you wanted the latest tea, you'd go to the Kumagaya market, and the old lady sellers there would spill all the latest tea for you. And people bought stuff, too. This was usually lovely for the sex business because people would go to the market, buy stuff, and then go stay at the inns where the hostess girls worked. Unfortunately, the only girls you could find there in Kumagaya were the type who didn't think yours was the biggest she'd honestly ever seen. Because this post station never got official permission to hire prostitutes. That meant once market-goers finished with their business, they walked down the road to nearby Fukaya station where the red lights were actually lit and spent the night there. Seeing all those customers walk into the arms and legs of your competition was a bitter load to swallow. So, in 1832, Kumagaya officials secretly sent a request to the Oshi domain saying, "Please allow us to hire prostitutes." Some leader of a nearby village heard about this and immediately fell off his mistress. People took this seriously. Community elders had seen what happened to the villages around post stations that did hire serving girls. Young, thirsty village men, instead of staying at home victimizing their peepees, spent all their time at the brothel inns, neglecting their fields and their work. Money wasn't exactly abundant out there in the boonies. These women were draining their resources dry. Not to mention, they saw the spread of prostitution as city culture invading their traditional rural way of life. And so, a few villages got together to fight back. Not 3 villages, not 23, but 153 villages. It's easy to assume that in a non-democratic society, the little people spent their days just suffering under oppression. But as we'll see, peasants had lawful ways to challenge authority. These peasants wrote a big complaint to local domain officials, people in charge of the wider area that included Kumagaya. They respectfully crammed in as much hate for the Kumagaya officials as possible, but their main argument shows us these village leaders were not just country bumpkins ignorant of things beyond the edge of their turnip patch. They were actually smart and kept up with the latest events in the capital. They complained that the post station had experimented with serving girls decades before, and the results were disastrous. These young men, give them an inch and they'll spend a mile. Young men held gambling parties at the station, lost all their money, and got disowned by their families. Hostess girls caused social disorder, they thought. Now, I'm no professional debater, I'm more of an idiot, but I think this was a good argument, because the shogunate was dealing with a disaster in the countryside. Famines were making the rural population reach weight loss goals they didn't know they had, and crime was on the rise. In the government's eyes, peasants were the backbone of the country, honorably making food for everyone. But it seemed to them like social order in the provinces was breaking down, and farmers no longer wanted to farm. The complaint of the Kumagaya villagers struck at the heart of the shogunate's fear. If farmers spent all their time with prostitutes, getting disabled for life from STDs and running away from home with their hostess girls, when would they find the time to work on their fields? To the shogunate, the ideal countryside commoner was a responsible man who put his head down and farmed, and resisted the distraction of useless hobbies like having fun or life goals. As post stations grew from small rest stops into large party towns, the Kumagaya villagers were warning the authorities that their ideal countryside culture was being invaded by city culture. There was a stereotype that city folk chased leisure and entertainment. It was a culture of excess. The letter worked. Domain and shogunate officials denied Kumagaya Station's prostitution petition. The village heads were ecstatic, patting themselves on the bum for a job well done. They celebrated with the confidence of people who had just won the first phase of a boss fight, unaware that there was a second phase coming soon. In any case, these hillbillies did accurately understand the sentiments of the shogunate. Those in power wanted to preserve what they thought were the traditional ideals of rural Japan. In the early 1800s, they tried to wipe out symptoms of urban culture creeping into the countryside. So they distributed educational pamphlets asking people to please, for the love of social order, go back to farming. It's a noble, respectable job. The pay isn't great, but the benefits are shit. They banned things like plays, gambling, even painting and flower arranging clubs. Somewhere out there, sitting sadly, staring off into space, was probably some poor girl who had found her life's meaning in arranging flowers. People did try to crack down on illegal prostitution. The shogunate sent inspectors to inns. Some villages warned innkeepers to close the door on young men from their communities. To get around this, young village boys actually lied. Can you believe that? They lied about their identities, disguising themselves as travelers. They all turned into Pinocchios, but down there. Young men can get pretty violent when their balls are blue. One union of innkeepers complained that when they turned away local boys, these brats shouted, they threw rocks, and they tried to ram down the gates. Between a man and his climax lie only minor inconveniences. Skip to 3 years later, Kumagaya Station officials sent a second prostitution petition, saying the station was going broke and desperately needed the money. They tried to do it in secret, but you can't hide from village elders who had nothing to do but follow gossip. Village leaders sounded the alarms and held an emergency meeting. They went to the post station and even got support from business owners in the station, then sent their complaint to the domain authorities. Then they marched all the way to the capital to deliver their requests to officials even higher up. These village leaders were not playing around. Now, sometimes in life you work really hard for something, but no matter how hard you try, in the end, you still fail. But not this time. It worked, and they blocked the prostitution petition again. Another win for the ordinary man against the rich and powerful. Unfortunately, their victory rang with a bong sound because it was so hollow. Even though these guys won the battle, they had no chance of winning the war. Prostitution marched right on down the provinces like a confident woman in tall wooden clogs. Many other post stations basically became red lantern districts, boosting their GDP. Inspectors sometimes raided inns, but places found to have illegal prostitutes were punished with basically a slap on the ass, like they had to pay a fine or be detained a few days. And that was because the shogunate faced a tough choice. They really did think the sex trade was ruining the traditional values of the countryside and wanted to rein it in, but they also needed their major roads to remain open. Many post stations had the financial health of a cancer patient, and if they disappeared, the country's highway system would collapse. Post stations needed these serving girls to stay afloat. That's why the shogunate couldn't be too harsh punishing violations. To the authorities, they had to allow a bit of disorder to maintain overall stability. But to village leaders, it just sounded like the samurai elites were more concerned with filling their own pockets than preventing the decay of countryside communities. Many places were like the Kumagaya villagers, fighting the same losing fight. What we don't hear of are the opinions of the hostesses about all this, because their opinions were given no voice. But obviously, these women played major roles in the rural sex business. Now, there was a type of sex worker that you might be surprised to hear about: widows. Widows were a huge part of the sex business in the provinces. Click here to learn all about their stories and get a more complete understanding of the rural prostitution business. We have some new members today on Patreon and YouTube: Don Armando Robles, Unparan Encore, V. Wright, and Aishatu Suleiman. Thanks a bunch, you guys. All right, I love you, and spread the knowledge.